Congressman Hunter, the New York Times lead editorial backing up a bipartisan report by the Senate Armed Services Committee, taking responsibility for Abu Ghraib and all those abuses we watched here on television all those weeks back in '05, takes them right to the top, to the Secretary of Defense. Your reaction?
Well, Chris, I think it's left-wing rubbish, and let me tell you why.
By the bipartisan committee?
By the New York Times, and I think if all of the bipartisan committee, the folks that signed off on that must not have read it very well, because it has huge holes in it. And here are the facts. 3 people were waterboarded. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the guy who participated in killing 3,000 Americans in New York. Abu Ghraib, who was one of the people that led after he had been waterboarded. He talked about a plot. He revealed a plot to strike the United States a second time. He, in fact, led us to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. He led us to a number of other operatives. When we got Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, not only did he say, yes, indeed, after he had been subjected to waterboarding, not only did he admit that he, in fact, had masterminded the attack on our New York buildings and on the Pentagon and that plane that went down in Pennsylvania, he also pointed out a plan that he was starting to put into effect, in which he was admonishing his terrorists, his subordinates, to make sure that they bombed American buildings at a high enough height so that they would trap our citizens inside it with the flame and the fire. Out of the thousands and thousands of people that we detained, there were 3 people, and I've named 2 of them, Zubaydah and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. And contrary to what Jim says, we in fact got, after this procedure, we got enormously valuable information that saved American lives. So, you know, you're a hardball guy. Throw a hardball out there to left field and ask some of these people, would you, if you had a chance to save American lives, would you use this procedure, which in fact we use on ourselves, because we use that to train our Navy SEALs with. So we didn't do anything to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed that we don't do ourselves in our training to toughen our guys up.
What do you make of the fact that all these weeks we watched those trials of those lower-ranked service people in Abu Ghraib for abusing the prisoners over there? Lindy England gets 3 years. This fellow, Sergeant Frederick, gets 8.5. A lot of people went for lower sentences. Specialist Sivitz gets a year. Roman Kroll gets 10 months. And other people, a lot of them get lower charges, obviously plea deals, certainly by the looks of them, to keep quiet. It seems to me that now we're getting the report that this stuff that happened in Abu Ghraib came from the top all the way up to the Vice President's office, all the way to the Secretary of Defense. Does that bother you?
Okay.
That these lower-level people paid the price for instructions and guidance coming from the top?
Okay, Chris. It's very serious, and I hope you'll hear me out, because I've looked at all the records, I followed the trials, and here's what we've discovered. At like 2 o'clock in the morning at those cell blocks, you had that enlisted lady and her boyfriend and their associates doing things to the prisoners and to each other which were remarkably nasty, dirty things. And I think you saw the pictures of the underwear on the heads, the goat's head, and all the other very objectionable things that happened. The lawyers initially said, we're going to link this to the top. This was a directive from Donald Rumsfeld. There are thousands of pages of transcript, and in not one word did the defense lawyers, who had a real incentive, and they had lots of discovery, not one word in those transcripts and in the thousands of pages in the numerous official reports that were done by very honest people in the United States Army and our other services, did they ever say that the enlisted lady who went in at 2 o'clock in the morning with her boyfriend and did those things to themselves and to the prisoners, that somehow this was some kind of an interrogation? There was no interrogation done at Abu Ghraib in those situations. Those were criminal acts done against prisoners and against each other, if you look at some of the very lurid testimony and transcript. Now, let me tell you, I read my friend Mr. Levin's report, and his staff says this is all linked to Don Rumsfeld. They start off with that, and then they make very broad, general allegations about how somehow interrogating Mr. Kayani in Guantanamo made that somehow migrated across the ocean and compelled this specialist or corporal and her boyfriend and their associates to do the things that they did. There was no link whatsoever, even by the defense lawyers, who had obviously an incentive to put out any link that they could, because they initially said, if you recall, we're going to prove that this was all part of official policy. It's left-wing rubbish.